Hi, I'm Metta Spencer, and today we have to deal with this very serious matter. You've got to pull up your socks and pay some taxes, and I do too. Only we maybe can get them back in other ways. And it's about carbon. We've got to stop global warming, and by all means, for sure, the first and most important way of getting there, it includes a tax on carbon. So I'm telling you the punchline right up front because we're going to have a conversation about it. And we're going to talk with two new friends of mine, Mark Tabbert and Philip Chipman, who are both in Southern California. And both of them are extremely engaged with an outfit called Citizens Climate Lobby, which they have just persuaded me to join. So I'm now a member too, although I don't know a thing about it yet. Anyway, hello, fellas. It's good to see you.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, we're going to talk about carbon and carbon taxation, I think, more than anything else, or you can stray off and talk about your organization too, if you want. So who's going to lead off and tell us why we have to pay some taxes on carbon?
If you take, in the United States at least, if you take your political bias and set it aside and you study what our options are to deal with the problem of climate change, you're going to come up with the same conclusion Citizens Climate Lobby has. You're going to want to put a price on carbon that steadily rises over time, year to year, and you're going to take that money and you're going to return it to all Americans, or in your case, all Canadians, on an equal basis. So the richest man in Canada and the poorest man in Canada gets the same dividend. And what that does is it protects the bottom of the income spectrum and also most of the middle class. In the United States, our numbers show that about 2/3 of Americans break even or come out ahead on this transaction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what happens?
By the way, I've heard that that's true in Canada too, that although most Canadians don't know it, they actually get a little bit more money back than they put in if they do a carbon tax.
So if you go to citizensclimatelobby.org, and by the way, citizensclimatelobby.org is basically started in the United States in San Diego. It grew in the United States, and then it grew in Canada. And in Canada, the Canadian chapters have done actually more good work than Americans in terms of getting results in Parliament. We have a bill in Congress, or we had a bill in Congress that'll be reintroduced for this new Congress. We had 86 co-sponsors on that bill, but you already have a prime minister that's got a carbon tax.
Theoretically, the provinces have the right to decide what to do. The prime minister has simply said, if you don't, I will, because he seems to have enough power to be able to impose a carbon tax if using whatever methods he wants to use for calculating it, if a province refuses. But the provinces vary a lot.
When we give a dividend to people to protect them from rising fossil fuel prices, many people will ask us in presentations, well, if I get the money and I can keep buying fossil fuels because now I've got more money to do it with, then what's the purpose? The purpose is twofold. One is in the United States, we can't pass a new tax, because the Republicans wouldn't let us. And actually, a lot of Democrats don't want a new tax.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to give the money back to people to give them the right to spend the money they want to, the way they want to. So if the United States does something to tax carbon and China and India and Canada doesn't do what we're doing, then we charge a duty of tariff on imports. So we believe this to be a global solution. We get a dividend to protect us, but corporations, companies don't get a dividend. Companies from day one see their energy costs rise if they continue to use fossil fuels. And in the United States, 2/3 of our carbon footprint in the United States comes from companies, not from your cars, not from your lights and heating and air conditioning. We think our carbon footprint is all about our gasoline and all about our heating and cooling and all, but it's not the truth. Mm-hmm. It's a misconception that's been, and a lot of environmental groups don't make that clear to us. It's everything we buy, every time we spend a penny, we're burning carbon. no matter what you buy. Because there's carbon behind every transaction in the marketplace, and companies are covering 2/3 of those, and they're charging us through the price they charge us for their goods.
I didn't realize that 2/3 of the carbon emissions come from corporations or businesses.
Yes.
That's worth knowing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you a pie chart, and I'll back that up.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
and also, I'm going to show you a wonderful tool that rationalizes carbon tax or carbon price or carbon fee. I became a member of the climate lobby only a couple of years ago. Also, I met with Metta through Mark, and she sent me this wonderful briefing that she did back in 2008, July, with a man by the name of Peter Victor. Carbon tax, what we're going to show you, doesn't force you to rely on science, which is really beautiful. It forces you to think about the economics of it, and you end up saving money. That's the beauty of it. So we're gonna. A little background on me. Just so, who am I? I have a aero degree from Purdue University back in '69. Worked for Boeing, or Rockwell and Boeing. Boeing bought Rockwell for 32 years. So my whole career is based upon science. If I don't believe science, I can't make the systems work. I'm currently in retirement, but I help out. I'm an advisor for UCI. And this is a UCI Energy Invitational. It's an event that UCI put on. The question is, how far could you go on $1 worth of energy for an hour? Mm-hmm. And so the entries were other colleges at the time. This is back in 2010. That's when they started this. And you'd run around the course for an hour, and they measure the amount of energy that you use. Of course, this is an electric car, so they had to measure the watts. So I won that, the greatest projected distance, and then in 2012, I became the overall winner. But I found out that electric cars were only part of the solution, and a very small part at that. It's just a thin line in a pie chart I'm going to show you. So what are these greenhouse gases? Well, you can see the bulk of them are the carbon dioxide from fossil fuel and industrial processes. And that includes making clothing and all the other types of plastics. From forestry, and then methane, which is 20 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. I've seen figures actually up to 100. Then we have nitrous oxide, which is another product of fossil fuels. And then we have fluorinated gases. Fluorinated gases are man-made gases that stay in the atmosphere for centuries and contribute to a global greenhouse effect. There are 4 types: hydrofluorocarbons, purofluorocarbons, sulfur hexafluoride, and nitrogen triofluoride. So those are the fluorinated gases.
Okay, well, if you've read this book, Drawdown, right, they put down, they say that the most powerful thing in the greenhouse gases, the most important thing that we could do to reduce global warming would be to reduce that stuff, those chlorofluorocarbons, because they're the coolant in our air conditioners and refrigerators. Right. And when we take them out to the city dump, they leak and they get out into the atmosphere. And so what we should be doing is somehow finding a way to capture that stuff and not let it out.
The next graph is actually one of yours also. And this shows from 1979 all the way to 2005 the amount of greenhouse gases and the different types and their contributions.
What are the colors? What are the colors? Oh, I see.
They're up here. Now I'm going to show you an updated chart. I found a new one, same chart, that goes to 2019. If you notice, the last chart ended at about 1.2. There's been no drop off, no change. It's actually gone up. It's gotten worse. And I think that's because China and the other developing countries are just consuming more, and cars, and you're just contributing. You can't stop it. That's a population effect. And
Well, I think even the US has continued to increase. And China,
correct.
I believe I was told that they hope that they can peak it at about 2050 or something pretty far off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're not even getting close.
Oh, Drawdown is an interesting book in that it describes the ways you can do through different techniques to bring down global warming, but it doesn't combine them all. It approaches them individually, which is wonderful, the payoff and what you have to do. So that's a wonderful resource. The tool I'm going to show you combines all that and
That's
shows you
beautiful.
the the other way I look at this is if you try to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, you have to go and regulate all these areas, which is a tremendous effort.
I
Takes a
agree.
huge amount of government staff and control and rules and every one of them will be fought to the death
Hmm.
by the whoever makes money, because we're in a capitalistic system.
Yeah.
You can't ignore it. So that approach will not work, in my opinion.
Hmm.
So, but let's go to the next slide before I talk about the solution. This is your slide, and I really like it. This is my favorite one. You summarized back in '08 the most effective and efficient policy would result in a deep greenhouse gas emission reduction is a market-based policy, such as an emissions tax. Now, you had a cap and trade system, and I marked that out because it's been found in the last few years that there's a lot of loopholes. Every
I
time
know.
this is, a cap and trade is instituted, industry figures out a way to get around it, and they still emit as much CO2. It's terrible.
Right. Well, I have to apologize for that, even including that, because already I knew that was the case. And I got into a big argument with some people about that because, Canada basically was going for cap and trade.
Yeah.
And my friends thought I don't know, off base.
Well, you were
But
ahead of
you're
your
right.
time.
It just is much more efficient to get. In fact, I still have friends who will say that regulation or cap and trade would be the way to go, and I think they're full of it.
Yeah, this I just read articles in the last year that debunked this cap and trade. What's really happening? See, I thought cap and trade was fine too because I was told.
Yeah.
And also I'm going to show you in the tool that you should complement the emissions tax with other regulatory policies. They
Mm.
complement it, but they don't have to be as fierce.
Mhm.
So anyway, let's go to the next slide. Here's carbon tax proportions. I thought this was kind of interesting. This is a relative tax rate per BTU. That's British thermal units. That's a way of measuring energy. So gas, oil, coal obviously is the worst. We know that. Oil's less, and gas, which is constantly promoted in the US, natural gas as the solution, is not the solution. It's just a better solution than coal or oil. So it's relative. Um, this is carbon tax rebate. This is from one of your slides, but I updated it because the tax started at $20 per ton in 2019, will rise to 10. And I think the next slide, this is 2020. It was announced that you're going to increase it by 566%.
Good
So
for us.
Canada, what?
Good for us.
You'll see this is remarkable. This is really leading the world, in my opinion.
Really.
Yes. And now what we have is the Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. We don't call it a tax because that turns people off. And it does
Yeah, Craig
exactly what.
Smith and Bill Fletcher call it a carbon fee.
Yes, that's a softer. That's a
Mhm.
softer presentation. Yes. And this is what Mark was talking about. Is that the fee, and the fee gets deposited in this trust fund, and then it's paid out to U.S. citizens. This is the current state of the world. 25 countries out of 195 have a carbon tax.
That's pathetic. That's really sad.
And this is the one where I put arrows on all the provinces that have a scheme on taxing. And I said, okay, Alberta's got SGER. What the heck is SGER? So I went over here and I spelled them out. There's SGER, Specified Gas Emitter Regulation. That's what they call it. So your provinces are doing their own thing. I think, what do we got? RGGI, that's a fun, I forget who they are, but anyway, Quebec has a carbon, has the cap and trade, which is interesting. And British Columbia has this thing called a GURCA, Greenhouse Gas Industrial Reporting and Control Act. So it's all over the place. You got to learn all of them. But United States is no different than Canada. California has its own. Where is it? Right there. California has its own cap and trade. So we kind of lead the nation as far as the environment goes, and we are able to get this through. But I'm afraid that we're the only one. So that was interesting. You can see back in 1992 and up in 2017, we're up to 42. That's a far cry.
What are these red bars that jump at 2006?
The red, Finland.
Finland?
Yes.
Boy, they really went all out, didn't they? All of a sudden, bang.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. I did. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
And what's the blue thing?
And it looks like Japan is doing very well too.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, in this one graph, you can kind of tell who's doing the best. Okay.
What's this thing on top over here?
This light blue?
Uh-huh.
I have no idea.
Well, there's a legend here. It looks like China.
Oh yeah, it is. It's China. And they're going to have an emissions trading system. I'll be darned. I didn't notice that.
Oh, that's a big pile there. Look how tall that thing is.
That is huge.
Yeah.
And there, it's rating the share of greenhouse gas emissions on the side. So they're going to do like 8% or something, maybe.
They've had carbon pricing in two provinces for over 3 years now.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, so now we're getting close to getting to the tool. How to evaluate the best and most efficient, easiest method to get rid of greenhouse gas emissions. That's the big question. That's the hard one. So if you had your druthers, if I was to dream, I'm a software engineer, I would create a tool that would implement all those changes and see the resultant emissions change. So I could evaluate what technique should I use to bring that down the quickest, and which is the least painful. The change must be interactive, so you ought to be able to play around with it so you can adjust it. And it should be intuitive, easy to use. Anybody can use this thing. Free of charge. Okay. Just such a tool has been created, and it took 3 groups: Climate Interactive, Ventana Systems, and MIT Sloan. So if you understand this is the first screen they put up, and they show you these graphs, and this is of course the year, and from 2000 to 2100. So this tool is going to show how you can reduce greenhouse gas emissions for 100 years. Actually, it's 80 years left, so. And it uses on the side here their primary graph. You can bring up many types of graphs, but this is their primary graph. Exajoules per year. Exajoules is a way of describing energy. And this is actually quintillion joules. It's quite a bit. It's equal to 1 quintillion joules. Yearly, the U.S. energy consumption amounts to roughly 94 exajoules.
This graph shows where our energy comes from. Each one of these colors is a different form of energy. Oil, I can't read the writing is too small, but
I
Yeah.
can read it. Coal is brown, oil is red, gas is blue, renewables is green, bioenergy is pink.
okay.
I don't
So
see
now,
anything called nuclear or new zero. I don't know what that
Because they're
means.
so small, they don't show
Oh,
up.
okay.
So this is where energy comes from now and if we do what we do today and we continue doing it, this is what happens to energy. This is where energy is going to come from until 2100. That's the status quo. And the chart on the right points to that.
But now, wait a minute. At 2100, all you're showing is that we're going to be having a lot more energy, but it's distributed about the same as it is now, right?
This
Right.
this whole page implies if we do nothing, we just
But no, it
status
wouldn't
quo. We just
imply
continue.
nothing because you got at 2100, you got a bigger slice of.
I meant do nothing about greenhouse gas emissions.
Oh,
We keep
okay, but
burning fuel.
we will be using more energy in 2100 than
Yeah,
we
because of the population
like
growth in
twice
developing
as much
countries.
or something. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Got it.
So then the graph on the right, so that's what happens status quo. And the graph on the right, Phil, point to that one.
Yes.
Everybody see that? That's what happens to temperature under the status quo. And I'll say the good news about this is when this chart was when En-ROADS first started, the 3.6 degrees was 4.1 degrees. So we've already seen a half a degree drop in projected temperatures by 2100 based on what's going on today. So that's great news.
That's good news.
So now, Phil, go ahead.
Okay, so these two graphs, the bottom line is that what is the temperature in 2100? This is disaster. This is where you can't live in this world. There are parts of the world will be unlivable. We can't do that. So the key, and I think you know this by now, is to get down to plus 2 degrees. We
Actually,
can
1.5.
1.5. Okay. It's we can survive at 1.5. But the whole point is to bring this down. This is unsustainable. We can't live in this world. So that's the whole point of this tool is how it's like a game. How do we bring this down? Well, if you look down below here, you're going to see, remember that pie chart? And you remember the techniques? These are all these are all the sources. There's and they match the color this chart up here. So here we got coal. Here we got renewables, the green one. Here we got oil, the red one. All right. And these
Now,
are
hold
like
on. Okay, now here, take coal. There's a black
Yeah.
dot on there, and that means that we are really using a hell of a lot of coal. And what
Yes.
we want to do is slide that sucker down to the left, right?
You've got it. It's like a
All
soundboard. If you're into music, and it's like a soundboard. You can move these
Mm-hmm.
to the left or the right.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing about the tool is that these are policies. You're going to change the policy. And if you want to know about the policy on coal, you double click on coal and it gives you the details. What's the tax or subsidy in dollars? When does it start?
Phil, I'm going to stop you again.
All right.
Go back. First of all, explain to everybody, we don't move the energy source supply except by moving the other bars on the right, Phil? Explain that. We don't go here and move renewables. We go on the right. We go to transport.
Okay. Now this is a policy, so I'm gonna if I move it, watch this. See, it's tax. Did you see it changed? Status quo. So everything. The reason it's going to hit 3.6, and this is Metta's question earlier. Status quo. If we kept everything status quo for all these adjustments, just kept living life like we're living, we're going to hit 3.6. But if we change the policy on coal, say if we tax it and we keep moving that to the left, people, it upsets a
Is
lot
it-
of people.
What am I looking at? This curve up here or this wedge of?
A number of things have happened. It went down 0.1 degrees because it got taxed. And also
Not up here. Where am I seeing
on the
it go
graph,
down? I'm
what?
sorry. Up here, I'm looking at this graph up at the top on the left that says 3.6. Now,
Yeah.
if you shoot that little black dot on coal downward, it should change that, but it doesn't. Is
did.
it? Go on, move
3.5.
it some more. Let's see what happens.
3.5,
3.4.
3.4.
Okay. Okay.
Not enough.
No,
very
not
highly-
enough. No.
You could very highly tax coal, and if you pop on it, you'll see it got taxed $110 per. I don't know what TCE is, but it's a unit of measurement. So $110, the highest that they consider you can tax it. You're only going to bring it down a point, a decimal point. Very few, very little.
But
No.
Phil,
Yeah,
how
that's
did-
disappointing. I thought we get rid of coal and you're halfway home. No?
There you go. Now, what's interesting? You notice the blue. Where's coal? I mean, I'm
Gas.
sorry, the brown.
Yes. Oh,
Did you see the
is-
brown go down as you taxed it? See on the graph?
No. Where?
on the left graph?
On the graph on the right. Okay, do it
Yeah,
again.
it changes in real time to you sliding down and taxing it more and more and more. It didn't have much effect, which surprised me too. Now, if you subsidized it, it really didn't hurt it that much. It raised it a tenth of a degree centigrade.
Yeah.
All right, so taxing coal or subsidizing it really doesn't have much of an effect, which surprised the heck out of me. And then you go over to deforestation. Well, how about planting trees? I read planting trees was the way to go. All right, let's plant some trees. I'm going to move the slider off to the right, low growth. I'm going to plant some trees. Did you notice it came down?
No.
Oh, it didn't.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, it didn't. I thought it was 3.7. 3, low growth, medium growth. Gosh, I'm not getting any decrease. Finally, I got a tenth of a degree in high growth.
Oh.
So that was disappointing to me to see that.
Right.
Now you could go argue with the people that
Oh.
made the tool, but I'm not going to do that because I'm just I'm going to trust
that
MIT.
bugs me because I've been into forestry for big time
Me
lately.
too.
I've been
Me too.
pinning a lot of hopes on forestry.
A lot of hopes.
Yeah.
Now every time you move a slider valve, you can go up here and reset it. Okay, you can reset the graphs and you get back to, if you get lost in the tool,
Okay.
I'm just telling you how to run the tool. And if
Okay.
you want to see other charts, other effects, like impacts, like sea level rise, there's a sea level rise.
Doing what? What'd you do there?
I picked it. I went down here. I clicked on, I'm going to go back to the original home, global sources of primary energy. I clicked on this. And I brought up all these different types of graphs. And I picked sea level rise. And guess what? Status quo, there it is. This is in meters too, so watch out. This is 1.2 meters. This is a 6 feet by 2100, which floods all the coastal towns. And if I do the taxing on coal, is that going to bring the sea level rise down?
No.
Oh, hardly at all. That was disappointing. And also, if I do afforestation, the max, nothing. Hardly anything. So that was very disappointing.
Carbon price is the one thing we can do to drastically affect the temperature in the future.
Right.
Right.
You're going, or you I might as well do it right now.
Okay.
Let me show you. And I can do every one of these sliders. I don't want to take up time, but hardly any of them move the dial. Okay. Watch this. Carbon price is low right here, 3.6 degrees. Okay. Medium. Oh my gosh. 0.2 degrees. Just with a medium. All right, let's go a little more. 3.3. Oh my gosh, it's coming down. Look at that. Very high. Let's go to the highest, 2.7 degrees. What is the carbon price? 250 per ton.
And in our bill, we would
Yeah,
get
but it's still 2.7. That's what that is sort of. I had a bit of an argument with Bill Fletcher the other day because he says, well, now, no, we're never going to get it down to 2.0, but we'll get close if we just if we do certain things. You know, the best we can do is get down to about little above 2.0. And I said, the only way we're going to really survive is if we actually do reduction from the existing atmosphere, actually suck it out of the atmosphere and put it away. So, you know, now we've got a whole conversation over here when we come to deforestation and afforestation and methane and agriculture and stuff. There's a whole issue there. But what bothers me is what the point is, and that he's pinning all his hopes on emission reduction. And I say, yeah, we got to do all the emission reduction in the world, and it's still not enough. We got to do more than that. We got to actually suck the carbon out of the atmosphere as well, a lot of it, by probably forestry and probably mostly agriculture.
So let's do that. In fact, what you just said, sucking the that's called technical carbon removal. It's under technological.
No, because he wants to put everything on these machines that are like David Keith is cooking up, that they have out in BC, and they have one in Switzerland and one in Iceland, where they actually use machines to draw it out of the air. I'm talking about not technological, but unless you want to call agriculture technology, but just using better agricultural methods, you can put a hell of a lot of carbon into the soil where it belongs.
Yes.
And I don't want to call that, you don't even have anything here called agriculture. You have,
you know what? I was just looking, I can't find it. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Well, but here's what MIT says. Metta.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
MIT says this, Metta. There is no silver bullet.
Yeah.
They call carbon price the most silvery bullet. Mm-hmm. And they say we need silver buckshot. And the truth is, let's just figure, how long would it take us to go up to 250 a ton? It would take us about 20 years in the United States. But if we find we're not reducing, if it's not working fast enough, the United States, the bill in the US raises the price faster. Instead of going $10 a year, it goes $15 a year. So that cuts that 20 years down. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, this underfigures conservation. Conservation is not built into this deal. If we put a price on carbon, and the world acknowledges that we have this problem for the first time, and all countries start engaging all their entrepreneurs, all their investment and everything, and oil becomes an energy company instead of being an oil company. And the same with all these companies. Coal goes away in the United States, according to our plan, in 10 years. And it's going to be faster. It's going to be faster if we address the thing globally. That's my feeling and belief. And I think there's a lot of people who would back that up.
Okay, I am by no means arguing against that, because I believe you 100%. I just don't think it's enough. And so you're going to take care of, you know, but you still got 0.7 degrees left over. And that's not good enough. We got to do something more. Now,
right.
Phil can do that now. Phil can do that now.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. That's kind of the finishing, what I'm going to show you. You can go, now that I moved the carbon price all the way over, and I'm frustrated that I only got down to 2.7. That's not low enough. Now, look at all the other things I have to play with. I've only played with one slider, one policy. And you can do this a number of ways. Let's try, and you can try different things. I'll stop the deforestation. Oh, I got 0.1 degrees out of that. I can do some carbon capture. Oh, that works. That's bringing it down. I'll just do a little medium growth. How about if the population, instead of low growth, I'll say, yeah, make it low growth. Did that help at all? Lowest growth brought it down another tenth. How about, I haven't even touched energy, transport, buildings, and industry. I could say energy efficiency is increased. Now I'm down to 2.1. And like everything else, you can read about that. Increase, decrease efficiency of vehicles, shipping, air travel. That's across all of these transportation systems. That's good. Electrification or energy efficiency. This is buildings. Increase that. Oh, I'm down to 2. Plant some trees. Got to plant a lot. Now I'm down to 1.9.
Mm-hmm.
How about if I mess around with methane? Look at this.
Come on. That's what I've been waiting for.
There you go.
That's where I've been hung up in the last month.
Because methane is such a powerful greenhouse gas. I kind of say that.
I'm so glad you have this sucker, because that is what I've been trying to tell people. A year ago, I got on my high horse and I gave a big speech up at Pugwash, and they cut me off after 10 minutes. They wouldn't let me tell them what I had to tell them, which was that we got to work on methane. And you know where we got to work on methane? We've got to take care of the Arctic.
Yes.
And it's really important to stop that melting out of permafrost.
Oh, yes.
That's where it's going to come from.
Oh,
and,
yes.
and people don't pay any attention to it. But there, you've got the name of the game right there. That sucker is big.
That's
it is
big.
Metta,
really impressive.
Metta.
Uh-huh.
Refreezing the tundra in the Arctic is not something that's going to be very easily done unless we deal with all the stuff on the graphs below. What can affect methane is the understanding of this understanding. Natural gas, natural gas, the way we handle it now, is as dirty as coal if you account for the leakage. If there's 2% leakage in from the ground to your stove, it's as dirty as coal. Mm-hmm. And that kind of leakage happens routinely everywhere. There's no place gas is not leaking and releasing methane, and that's not figured in the coal price.
Okay, let me give you another little angle on that, which I don't want to hijack your talk, because I could give a whole talk on this myself, which is that the spread of forests into the permafrost in places like Siberia, that is what is melting the permafrost. It's raising the temperature of the permafrost and is releasing decayed grass and junk that's frozen, which then sets off bacteria, which produces the methane.
I didn't know that.
Reducing, there are 2 people named Zimov in Siberia who are looking at doing things like putting big animals. Now, this is a far-fetched solution, and it's not going to be quick enough to even at best, you couldn't go anywhere with it, but it proves the point. They have a place called Pleistocene Park, which is in the Arctic, and they get big animals like bison, and they wish they could bring back the woolly mammoth, and all these big animals that go around trampling the snow and knocking it aside so they can get out the grass in the winter and eat it up. So the effect on the herds of animals keeps the temperature of the soil down more than anything else anybody can think of. So if we could just put a whole bunch of animals up there, but you'd need a couple of million bison or something. Anyway, that is the point, that the main reason they want these animals is they knock over little saplings that are growing. And because of the warming, the forests are growing where they don't belong. Shrubs and forests, but mostly forests, where they didn't used to belong and didn't have them there. And so you want something that knocks down these trees before they get big enough to be impossible to knock over and keep them from growing, because these forests are what is warming the soil and is going to melt the whole sucker.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why I was enthusiastic about your methane thing, because that's really important. And I
Oh,
and
yeah.
of course their solution isn't going to work for the short interval that we have to do it in. Be
Correct.
nice if we could put a bunch of animals up there, but you can't do that quickly. Anyway, it's really interesting. Now you've got it down to 1.5, which was quite livable.
And look at, I've never popped on methane, but I just reading it right now. It's the contributions sources: cows, agriculture, natural gas drilling, and waste. So that pretty well covers it.
Oh, but
I wonder what they mean by
do your
waste.
balance. You've got to do a calculation. The cows emit methane, but there are things you can do about that. And it's a question of how much methane you're getting out of the rear and the front end of the cow compared to how much they are able to sequester by their foraging methods. It's the way you raise cows and not whether you have cows, because you can raise cows in such a way that they are beneficial, or you can raise cows the way we do now, which is in feedlots, which is certainly not beneficial. So
No.
it really, there's a whole story there too.
There is a huge story. Oh,
Yeah.
and here's your F gases, by the way. They combine in
yeah.
there with other gases.
When they said waste, I wonder what they mean by waste.
To me, that's like waste, garbage dumps, and they produce a tremendous
Sewage,
amount.
maybe. Mm-hmm.
But do you know the flaring of gas? The flaring of gas is the third largest source of greenhouse gas in the world,
Yeah, I didn't know that.
and it's illegal in the United States to do that. But of course, everybody does it.
Yeah.
Well, there's a new protocol, I guess you call it. In Rwanda, they got together. There was this Montreal Protocol about 15 years ago or 20, where they outlawed the kind of chlorofluorocarbons that was being used in refrigerators and air conditioners. They switched to something else, and this was done for the sake of protecting the ozone layer, which it has done very well. It's done, but now they see that the thing they put in instead is no good either, and that's a major source of the greenhouse gas. So this Rwandan meeting a couple of years ago enacted an agreement that they would switch to other kinds of coolants in refrigerators and so on, but they're not as good. I think a lot of it's going to be ammonia-based coolant. I don't know, but I don't know enough about it technically. But I do know that it's not as an effective coolant as what they're using. But more than that, it's going to. I think they've got a 10-year timeline to make that happen, and it's just about creating new refrigerators where they don't use this stuff they won't use it anymore. But that's not to say anything about what they're going to do about used refrigerators, taking the gas out of the existing refrigerators when they take it to the dump. They've got to get it out of there because otherwise it's going to get into the atmosphere.
Yes.
So I think everybody should have a rule that whenever they deliver a new fridge to your house, they have to take the old one out and take it to a central place where you have technicians that can remove that gas. Maybe some places they have that. I've been looking for some expert to interview about that because it's really could be really important. But I think even more important is this methane thing in the Arctic, because this methane is bubbling up from the clathrates at the bottom of the Arctic Ocean. And it right there's doomsday, because you have it how much it is. You see, when you slide that thing up to where it looked like it's the maximum. That's not the maximum. That's just the beginning. They're going to, when that stuff starts melting, it's a runaway phenomenon, and it melts the rest of it faster. So you got to extend that graph out here about 5 feet to show how much it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They call those tipping points.
Yeah. That's one. I think that's the one we got to worry about the most.
Yeah.
I'm trying to reach a guy named Peter Wadham in England, who's just come out with a new report on the East Siberian Ocean and how much the methane hydrates are melting up there. I can't reach him. I don't know why. I can't reach him, but I've got to find a way to get somebody to talk about that, because he's saying, and there's something about salt aerosols that can be used as a, I don't know. I don't know enough about it to.
It'd be good to have an expert to talk about that.
Yeah, I want to get somebody if I can. I've been looking.
I left a link in the briefing. All you have to do is type in En-ROADS, and you will get to this tool.
And
Oh.
and anybody coming here can play around scooting these little black dots up and down.
You can do it on your iPhone.
Huh?
Yeah. You can do it on your iPhone.
No kidding.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a little tab down here. If you want En-ROADS ambassador, they call it ambassador training. This Climate Interactive, they have a whole training support, courses, webinars on how to brief it. This is very deep.
Beautiful,
I haven't even
beautiful.
gone through all this.
Hey, go back. I want you to scoot one over for me. Go back to the thing, please. I want you to play with economic growth.
Economic growth.
Yeah.
First of all, that means higher or lower growth in goods produced and services provided. It's measured in GDP per person, key driver in consumption. So if we move that around and we have high growth, look what happens to the temperature.
Go all the way up. Let's see what happens.
1.6.
Well,
it affects it, but not much.
That's not bad. Okay. Yeah. I think that's nice. I'm glad to hear that, because that's really an important thing. If you can trust that graph, scoot it down to the bottom. Let's see what difference we make.
So if we go down, low growth.
All right. So we go from 0.4 to 0.8, was it?
We
go
0.5 to 1.4.
Go to the top again. Go up to the top again. Up to the top again, all the way. So it's 0.2 degrees centigrade.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, because, my friends, half of my friends are Luddites. They believe that we have to smash everything and go back to living, in the forest, digging our own potatoes.
Caveman. Yeah.
We can't have a car. We can't have, can't have electric appliances and things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that, and I've never believed it, and I get into trouble arguing with them. But you see, it doesn't make that much difference.
Doesn't make that much difference. No.
If these people really are on top of it, and if that graph means what it looks like, then you can trust it.
Yeah.
You just won my argument with my best friend.
Yeah.
But remember,
my best friend, by the way, moved to New Zealand to become kind of a, I don't know, to live out in the woods or something, and out in the,
they call it off the grid, and
off the grid, all these things, because that's the way she was going to save the world. And I said, "You're silly. That's not going to save the world." But so we almost lost our friendship over it.
Remember Metta. Remember that 0.2 change is based on all these other assumptions that Phil's built into the system at this point. If you went back to the status quo, go back to the status quo, Phil, and get rid of all
you're going to love this.
And then play around with economic growth. See, your Luddite friends are maybe smarter than we think.
But if you had low growth,
could you?
3.
The fun thing about this chart, Metta and Phil, is that this, we're looking at climate change. It's like that's our only problem. But if you read a book like Collapse, which identifies a dozen environmental problems, and every one of those problems contributes to a collapse of our civilization and maybe life itself, and every one of those problems is real and has caused other societies to collapse. The reason I focus on climate change is because it's the one with the shortest fuse. If we don't do something with climate change quickly, it's a disaster for my grandchildren. My first one was just born a month ago.
Is this it?
Yes. Yeah. And you
Okay,
know,
but now help me with this,
okay,
but now help me with this, because when you wiggle this economic growth, I don't know what it would mean to increase or decrease economic growth unless it had an impact on some of these other things.
It does.
In what
it does.
way would anything change? How could you change our consumption without increasing the energy use, for
Okay,
example?
that's a good question. This is what I assume. I'm assuming you have high growth. Well, you haven't changed any of the ways that you use fuel. Okay, but if I had a carbon price and you'll see the green area expand, which is the renewables. Look at that expand. Look at the coal go down. Look at the degrees go down. We're at 3 now,
Okay,
and we
now
had high growth.
uh-huh. Okay, now bring it down to where it was, medium, where we are. That was the status quo. And okay, so that's an interesting one right there. We've got the same amount of economic growth at present, no, not
Yeah.
decreasing, not increasing,
Right.
but you've increased the carbon price,
Yeah.
and you haven't brought it down as far as we need to go.
Correct. That's why I had to play around with all these other sliders. But economic growth, it had an effect, 0.2, low growth. So moving out into the boonies, that helps. But it's only one part of the
Okay, now leave everything alone and wiggle the methane thing. Bring the methane down a little bit.
not too much, but effective.
Because
0.5.
our methane is not a result of economic growth as such, or carbon price. So that's not going to be, you got to do something special about the methane. That's not that the economic growth and carbon price are not going to do it. It's
You're
other
right.
things.
Well, it's all these energy. This is going to happen because it saves people money. That's what the attractive thing is. Even in transport, people that have electric cars are finding out there's no maintenance. It's far cheaper to have an electric car. Well, that helps. I mean, every one of these things, I look for the things that have a benefit
Okay.
financially.
Okay, electrification, I think, is going to happen, and electric energy efficiency may. Electrification, bring that. Okay, now you got electrification all the way up on both transport and what was the other one, and now you've got it down to under 2.
Just on electrification and getting rid of methane, of course.
Get rid of methane. So that's a high price. So our policy now is going to be a high price on carbon as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's
electrify everything in sight. Keep your population stable. Keep your economic growth stable. Don't grow, don't decrease. And keep your methane down. Get your methane down to the bottom. And you're under 2, which is still not good enough to make me happy, but it's livable. We could survive there.
Yeah, in fact, I think you've identified the minimal that you have to do. It's very interesting. I hadn't done this. You can play with this tool till the cows come home.
Oh, this is fun. I love this. I can imagine staying up all night playing with this thing. And then writing a brief to the government. Yoo-hoo, guys, here's what we got to do.
Just put us on the CC list, please.
Okay, absolutely. And we've got to do this again one day soon. We'll get some of your Canadian citizens, climate lobby friends to call in and have you play with this for them, okay?
Sure.
Next time. Okay, thank you guys. Take care.
Thank you, Metta.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you for